Well, let me introduce the panelists for today. First is Scott Brockman. Scott joined the Memphis Shelby County Airport Authority in June of 2003. He was appointed president CEO in January of 2014, after having served as executive vice president and chief operating officer. Thanks, Scott, for being here. I like your backdrop. That looks good. So thanks. I know you're busy and appreciate you spending some time with us. Next is Doug Kreulen. Doug joined the Metropolitan Nashville Airport in 2012 and was named president CEO in 2017. Previously served as COO, where he oversaw a whole bunch of stuff, operations, maintenance, public safety, development, engineering for both the Nashville International Airport and the John Toon airports. Doug and I had an exchange on Twitter this weekend because I flew out of Nashville. And we'll talk about that in a minute while we talked about what we talked about on Twitter, because I don't want to get ahead of myself. And then everybody knows Steve Smith. Steve served as the airport manager of McKellar County Airport from 93 to 2007. And then in 2009, he joined the best airport in the state, no offense, Doug or Scott, the Jackson-Madison County Airport as executive director, where he's awarded Tennessee Airport Manager of the Year in 2014. Welcome, Steve. All right, so Scott, Doug, and Steve, I'm going to ask you guys a bunch of questions. The first question I do want each of you to ask, but just so the people know, what exciting things do you have going on at your airport, whether it be construction, new destinations? Memphis, I know y'all got a new destination that was announced recently, new carriers, anything like that. And it looks like, Scott, you're first on my list, so I'll let you go first, and then Steve, and then Doug, you're to the far right of my screen, so I'll let you answer this last. But exciting things going on, construction, destinations, new carriers, anything like that?
Well, oddly enough, thank you, Ryan. Oddly enough, Memphis has added a number of new destinations during the pandemic. We had Delta start Salt Lake City. We've had Southwest actually announce it before the pandemic, but actually roll it out during the pandemic, flying to Atlanta. We've had Southwest now flying to Phoenix. So we've done a number of things on an air service. We've been very blessed to have those occur. On a capital standpoint, we've pressed ahead with our projects, what we call our big three. Our concourse modernization, which is what you see in my background, that's the artist rendering, and our new airfield maintenance operations, combined space, and our consolidated de-ice pad. Those three projects alone are north of $500 million. And so we're continuing to develop the airport as we can. Everyone always asks me, why do you have to spend $300 million on a consolidated de-ice pad? And the answer is because of FedEx. We are the world's busiest airport between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. So every one of those planes in the wintertime have to be de-iced on departure. And there's between 150 and 170 flights per night. That's notwithstanding precipitation. That's just normal operations because of precipitation at night. So thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Scott. Steve, what about you? I think I know the answer to this, but construction, new destinations, new carriers process?
Well, we're getting ready for a new runway project, and there's a lot of things that you have to do. A primary runway is due for an overhaul, as you know, being on our board. We have gotten a long period of time out of the current runway, but there are things, as my counterparts know, that we have to do. Prior to that, we've started those this year, getting ready. We're doing a new airport layout plan. We're looking at where we're going to in the future do some public-private partnership work. All of that's exciting because we've never done that before. We just finished a total repave and marking of the ramps and taxiways, apron areas. So all of that is just completed in this last week. New destinations, we're talking to 3 carriers right now. It's actually 5 carriers as part of the reselection for essential air service. We're looking at Chicago. We're looking at increased flights to Atlanta. We're also looking at Panama City. So there's some things going on that we hope we can have some announcements for after Christmas. But right now there seems to be, I'm like Scott, we pressed on with as much capital as we can. And everybody knows that's in this business that funding is the issue right now. So we're struggling with what we can and cannot do, but we're trying to do as much as we can. I'm excited to see where the industry is beginning to rebound in places, and I know we'll talk about that later. But thanks for having me on this morning.
Absolutely. Thanks, Steve. And who's next? Doug, you're next.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Ryan, again for the opportunity. We've had a couple of new destinations as part of your question. Southwest has taken us to Chicago multiple times a week now, and American Airlines added Phoenix for us, so that was new for them. Probably the biggest one that we're most excited with was last weekend was adding Cancun back with Southwest, and that was the reason that's the most exciting. Not only is it probably a nice place to go visit, but it was our first international flight since everything stopped in March. Like Steve and Scott, we've been focused on continuing to build out. We borrowed a bunch of money in December just prior to the pandemic, and so we have a little over $1 billion in construction going on. About 3,000 construction workers out here every day, building new ticketing, new terminal space, rebuilding a runway, and we're about ready to start looking at the roads coming off of the interstate to the airport. So keeping pretty busy right now.
And I alluded to it earlier, but Doug has never met me, but I flew out of VNA Wednesday, and I tweeted out that they are, being an older gentleman, that it was tough transitioning for me walking in there, seeing different carpet than the iconic carpet that had been there before, and just for him to take change slow because it's hard on older people. And he responded to me on Twitter that they are doing some renovations, and to my disappointment, but I understand that the carpet at B&A is being replaced with something that looks a little different. And I think you could have a fundraiser by selling remnants of that carpet. I'd buy my wife some to put on the Christmas tree or something. That'd be an idea for you.
BNAshop.com already has it for sale.
There you go.
So
there you go.
If you want a doormat or an ornament, the carpet is available. Scott's shaking his head. It's like, oh man.
Yeah, the doormat, that's a good idea. I will say, when we went to our breakout rooms, one topic that came up in our room, and I don't know if it did in the others, I'm sure it maybe did, was how safe people feel about flying right now and what's being done. And I know, you guys run the airport and the airlines run the airline, and that's a distinction that we need to make. But can you guys, and maybe start with Scott and then go to Doug and finish up with Steve? We'll just go in that order. Can you just talk to us about, is it safe to travel right now? What precautions maybe have you put into effect since this COVID became a reality in all of our worlds? Can you guys address that a little bit?
Well, I mean, you're probably better addressing that to Dr. Eubanks than me, since I'm not a doctor and I didn't stay in the Holiday Inn Express last night. But, I mean, obviously airports system-wide have taken on a lot of new cleaning protocols. We've got a lot of disinfecting going on, and we have extra crews that have been brought on just to do that. Our cleaning people are now dealing with the checkpoint on behalf of TSA to ensure that gets disinfected every night. We're now cleaning the bins. Every time they're used, they get sanitized by a crew before they're put back in service. There's been a number of studies, Department of Defense and other aircraft manufacturers about the air on airplanes and why that is safe. Obviously, I don't know about other counties or airports. We have a masking requirement in place, and we provide, as I know Doug and others do, masks complimentary if someone doesn't have them. And so, I've only traveled once since the pandemic, and I felt perfectly fine traveling. It wasn't the airport or the airplane wasn't my challenge. It was when I got to the meeting and everybody who hadn't seen each other since March all of a sudden wanted to become, re-engaged, and that was a little bit concerning. But no, I mean, I feel safe traveling. I don't know medically what the prognosis is, but I feel perfectly safe flying in my airport. So
I'd say the same as Scott in terms of flying out of Nashville. I would say all the airports in general have done more to promote safety and cleanliness since the pandemic has taken over. That we're spending a few $1 million extra at least in the cleaning, but we have all the coolest gadgets now, so we look like Ghostbusters with our electrostatic discharge, devices to spray out the appropriate chemicals and clean all the areas. So one thing I know that we learned is we were lucky that FAA makes all of us have airport certification manuals and airport security plans and emergency plans. And so we had just published a pandemic guide a few months prior to this pandemic actually taking place. And where we really found a lot of help was we have 2 doctors on retainer, if you will, one from Vanderbilt Emergency Medicine and another one's an industrial hygienist that helps us decide how much airflow to pump in and out of the airport, to keep the air as clean as possible. But we're also investing now in touchless technology for our elevators, as well as UV lights to zap the particles coming out of the air conditioning systems, and also the handrails on escalators. So if you're touching it at the airport, either Steve, Scott, or I is personally cleaning it. And I tell people it's the cleanest darn airport you've ever flown out of now. And I'm sure these protocols will stay in place forever now. So pretty proud of what we're all doing.
Steve, what about you guys? I think I know the answer to this, but I'll let you go ahead.
Yeah, we've kind of been dragged into this, not knowing where we were going when it started, but we're like Doug and Scott, our guys, when one of the flights banks goes through or we're busy for some other reason, it's kind of amazing to see the guys coming through, and they do look like Ghostbusters with their fancy misting machines. And we've run into some issues too with our control tower, because these people work in close proximity, and also our fire department, our ARF department. We've got an issue going on right now, so we're struggling working with Madison County to make sure that we have the ARF coverage. In fact, I'm proud of our county fire chief. He sent 11 firefighters to ARF training and to the live burn in Millington last week, so we would be able to cover our shifts properly. So I think all of us have challenges that have been interesting to see how all of us have met those challenges. And I think that the Jackson-Madison County Airport, McKellar-Sipes, is just clean, like Doug says, clean as it's ever been. And I think that those protocols will stay in place from here on out.
Yeah, and even some construction things, to where we're looking at construction projects, to sort of what Doug said, to where making it to where the customer can come and have an experience at the airport where they touch as little things as possible, even a restroom door or to dry their hands or anything. Just making everything.
Those things are things that we had not had on the drawing board. We've been working on some active shooter things over the last year or so, but all of a sudden the touchless technology, the increase in it, we've always had that, but now we're working to find even more than what we're doing. So it's been an interesting journey since March, to be honest. It's been challenging.
Yeah, and I'll go to the next question, and I'm sort of winging it here, which is kind of dangerous. But Scott, what I want to do is, people here don't probably realize how blessed we are to be in between Memphis and Nashville when it comes to airline service. Scott, you guys are you not the busiest airport in the country? How did you say that a minute ago?
Well, we're the busiest nighttime airport in the world between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. because of FedEx. So
okay. And then Doug, I read an article a while back. It wasn't recent, to where your number of passengers, and this may have been pre-COVID, but you guys moved up in the rankings there, or broke some milestone or what? And I know I did not prep you for this question, but what are those stats?
Well, before the pandemic, all of us were growing. We had hit 7 years in a row of double-digit growth, and that's what got us a little bit behind on the construction that we're trying to catch up with now. So the pandemic, sort of put us back in our place, and I think we're all trying to, deal out of that. But we've had record-breaking years. We were at 18.3 million in 2019, and we were hoping to hit 20 million in 2020. And we were up by 14% in February of this year, when March was everything came off the rails. So we won't be nowhere near those numbers this year.
But when you say 20 million, that's 20 million passengers a year.
That's correct. Yes.
That's a big number. And Steve, I know McKellar's just under that, 20 million.
We're under it for sure.
but in fairness to McKellar, prior to the pandemic, you guys were seeing record numbers from your ES provider as well. So my point is air travel, and I know you can't say but for COVID, but prior to COVID, all three of these airports were doing very, very, very well, and continue to do well. So my question is describe the airline industry's outlook and how it's changed in the past year. So sort of, where we were pre-COVID, what's changing, and then sort of your projection as we've moved forward in the next couple of years. And I can't remember. I should have
start with Doug this time.
Yeah. Okay. We'll go Doug, and we'll put Steve in the middle, and Scott, you can clean up. How about that?
All right. So thanks, Scott. So the forecast, I think all of us have been using multiple economists to try to figure this out. When the pandemic first happened, you were hearing from the industry experts and everything that we'll be back within 2 years. And so, boy, that doesn't sound too bad. Let's go see how it is. And then it was like, whoa, this is worse than we thought. In March, normally we would have 50,000 passengers going through the Nashville Airport every day. By April 1st, we were at 500. So I think that's how far it came off the tracks. And so now, personally, at the Nashville Airport, we're looking at, and industry experts that we talk to anyway, looking between a 3 and a 4 year recovery. So we have a best case scenario for this year of 5.6 million, worst case 3.3 million. And if you put that together like a fan, we look at it like we're trying to shoot the funnel. So right now, as we go through this, we'll have about 4.4 million employments, which would mean we'd end up the year around 8 million, 9 million passengers, about half of where we were before the pandemic. So we're working on the airport side as hard as the airlines are working to get people comfortable with traveling again. I'm really happy that I would say 99.9% of everybody coming into the Nashville Airport is already wearing a mask. We haven't had a lot of problems with that. And they know if you want to get on an airplane and stay on an airplane, you got to wear your mask. So the airports and airlines are working this as close as you've ever seen partnership to try to get people going. For us, I'm not sure about Memphis or McKellar, but right now we're almost all leisure, almost no businesses. The businesses are all holed up at home, trying to decide when they can get back out and put people on the road. So It's a team thing, but hopefully those business travelers will come back once we get a vaccine going forward.
All right. I agree with Doug on this. We're seeing about 40% of what we were seeing pre-COVID, and we see very few business travelers. Most of it is the leisure market, or we're going to visit grandmother type thing. So I really can't stand to answer that as in depth as Doug and Scott can, because right now we're dealing with several regional carriers, the largest being SkyWest and the smallest being our current carrier, Air Choice One. I think what we see, it's really easy to tell which carriers we're dealing with that have challenged finances, and those are the ones that I think are going to cause us some heartburn and some late nights, but we're trying to work through those issues, and like I said, it's just hard for me to put a spin on that.
Okay. Yeah, Ryan, thank you. Memphis is somewhat unique in the fact that it's almost like running two airports. We've got the cargo operation, which is the largest in North America and number 2 in the world, and then the passenger operation. So cargo was actually calendar year 2020 and fiscal year, which ours is July 1 to June 30th, was actually down slightly because of trade issues. Starting in March, it was the opposite of passengers. We started to skyrocket on cargo, and we've actually, it's almost like every month there's a peak season for FedEx and UPS here in Memphis. So cargo has been doing extremely well. Passenger wise, we hit bottom like Doug in April at about, we were at about 6% of the prior year. We got down as low as about 300 passengers a day. And what's ironic in all of this is that, if you look at the ebb and flow of passengers across the system, the national average got down as I think low as 5%, maybe slightly below that. The recovery of the national average, though, has really hovered right around 30 to 35%. Since September 1, we've only had 4 days where checkpoint throughput in the national system has been above 40% recovery. So if you think about that, that's really a driving force. Luckily in Memphis, we've run about 10 to 12% ahead of the national average. But that's still only running at about a 42 to 47% recovery. But that's better than the national average. Maybe not better than everyone, because there are those that are doing better than us. The challenge is that we are seeing some business recovery. Obviously, FedEx still has to get their pilots and their people around the system. We have a number of companies that are very dependent on e-commerce, Smith Nephew, and that does medical devices, Williams Sonoma, and now that they're starting their Christmas push, they're traveling a lot more headquarter operation, but it's still probably 25% business, 75% leisure. And luckily we've Memphians, I don't know if we're not smart enough to know there's a pandemic or we just don't like being stuck at home, but they are traveling, and so we've had a much better go than the national average so far.
So the consensus sounds like it's too dangerous for me to travel for work, but I sure can go to Florida with my family. What it kind of sounds like. But
that the breezes on the beach are amazingly anti-COVID. So,
but the consensus is you guys are all seeing more leisure, less business, and then Doug, you sort of said, I think what you guys are forecasting is a 3 to 4 year recovery to get back to where you were, at least close to where you were pre-COVID. Yeah. Scott, you tend to agree with that, Scott?
Well, I tend to agree that it's going to be a longer term. I question whether or not we're going to get back to where we were. And the reason for that is so many airlines have taken assets out of their system, retired aircraft, gotten rid of older planes. And they really don't have the capital to do a lot of replacement. And I think I've seen economic projections that show that before COVID is over, they will have retired 30% of their fleet. So without some tremendous influx of capital and acquisition of airplanes, I don't see us getting back to 19, without something else occurring. And so, in our case, we got dehubbed in 2013 by Delta Airlines. We were a transfer hub. So in my, 6+ years as CEO, this is my second major challenge between being dehubbed and now COVID. So I'm getting a little tired of this personally, but I just am a little less optimistic, and I'm a very optimistic person, but I'm a little less optimistic because I just don't see the assets out there on an airline front to be able to return the number of seats that they had before.
Yeah. And I've learned, being somewhat involved in the airline industry, is that those planes aren't like cars, where they're building tens of thousands of them a day. These things, it's hard to get you have to order it, and it takes time, and it's not something that are just, you go to a car lot, a plane lot, and pick out a plane and they send it to you. It's a process. So I think that's an interesting thought. What about workforce with you guys? I know we hear that a lot with our industries and small businesses is workforce. What about you guys as an airport? Are y'all having any issues with, and I know you are an airport, not the airline, but just with pilots and ground workers and flight attendants and even folks that you guys have working in y'all's building, has that become an issue at all? Or do you foresee that being an issue moving forward? Steve, I'll let you start with this, and
Okay.
then we'll go to Scott and then Doug. And I know your answer will be a little different, just
It
by
is,
sheer
but
size.
in thinking about what Scott just told us, we're seeing for several years there's been a pilot issue, especially on our area where we are in the smaller airlines, because people want to fly for the legacy carriers. They want to go on and fly for Federal Express, and so as these airplanes and assets are pulled out of service, we've got a large segment of these pilots that are going to go ahead and take some early retirement offers and things. So I don't really see the pilot shortage looming in the next couple of years as bad as some of the others. We're seeing a lot of issues with the ground people that work on that fuel the airplanes, that load the baggage, that do all this, and a lot of it is what we have paid them in the past. We always felt like it was a workable wage. Now the government's come in and offered them more money to stay at home, and we've had trouble finding in the turnover that's just normal, plus the COVID turnover. We've had trouble finding good people, and as you know, Ryan, we've had to raise some of our rates that we really didn't budget for in April and May. We've had to come back and try to pay these people a little bit more to try to get them to stay with us as a retention type thing. So those are the things that we're seeing.
Scott, you or Doug want to weigh in on that? I can't remember what order.
Oh,
Maybe
I don't know what order we're going in anymore.
let's go Doug next. He's been sitting there. He looks too relaxed.
He always looks relaxed.
He does.
The same with Steve. For the most part, I think there's a little bit of a wage push, but really we haven't seen much of a problem with employment. The good news is airports never close. So they're open 24/7 every day of the week, and you need people to run them, and you're going to find them one way or the other. So I can't speak to all the airlines and the other tenants that are at the airport, like concessionaires and stuff. But if we track who's using our employee parking lots, those numbers are coming back as the number of flights and the number of passengers are starting to travel. So that's a good thing. From our perspective at the airport, we were gonna hire 40 new people, but because we were still on that upward scale before the pandemic. So we eliminated those positions and froze everybody. But we told our staff that we're not going to do any layoffs. We're strong enough to go through this first 12 months and see how things are going. So we have about 330 airport employees, and we're still at that number. We probably have been cautious to slowly replace attrition that we've had, and now we're in the hurry up mode and try to get everybody, all the positions we have authorized, filled again. It is amazing. I'm curious if it's happening to the other airports, but some of our older workforce that's been doing this for a long time, they've all said, hey, I'm out of here. I don't want to deal with this COVID restrictions. I don't want to wear a mask. I'm going to go ahead and retire so I can go fishing or hunting and stuff. So we have lost people that we didn't anticipate retire, and they just said, hey, I'll go do something else. So anyway, we'll keep working on that together.
Yeah, Ryan, we're like Doug. We've kept about 290 people. We were at about 300 before, but we had retirements right as COVID hit. One of the biggest challenges is Doug had is our workforce. A lot of those people have been with us 25, 30, 35 years, and they're just like going, I'm done. I'm not wearing a mask every day to come to work, and I've done my time, so I'm out. And that's a real challenge because you lose a lot of institutional knowledge, a lot of experience. One of the bigger challenges is law enforcement. There's been so much negativity towards police, and airports are relatively safe places to work as a police officers compared to inner cities or other places. But those have been a challenge. We really haven't seen a lot of challenges with passenger airlines and those entities. They seem to have done a pretty good job of managing their workforces. FedEx always goes through their challenges with winter, their Christmas push. As I said in an earlier answer, it's almost like they're running peak in September and October now, as opposed to November, Thanksgiving to January. So they're hiring constantly in order to keep the hub fully staffed. And so, but we haven't really seen any major problems from a staffing standpoint. And luckily, knock on wood, we haven't seen any supply chain issues with getting products in. There are some challenges, but not huge.
All right, thanks, guys. And I'll remind everybody on here, I'm going to wrap up here in just a minute. I'm going to ask another question or two, but if anybody has a question, to put it in the chat. I don't want you to get out of here and think I should have asked this, but if you have a question, send it to me. So as we talk about recovery and the future of air travel, just what do you guys think? Is there anything out there technology wise or in the field of marketing that you guys see that will play a part in the recovery of all this? Marketing, technology in the forefront?
Well, I'll jump in. I mean, that's obvious.
Got an Amber Alert.
Got an Amber Alert, going off everywhere.
Everybody's phone's beeping.
I forgot where I was when everything started beeping.
Touchless technology.
Yeah. No, I think, the big issue that we're going to see is that is these devices, as they all went off. That should have been my giveaway. These devices are going to start controlling everything. Okay. And I think you're going to start to see processes at airports become more linear. You're going to do everything from pre-check your bag. I think you're going to end up with, technology that's going to associate your bag with you through some sort of RFID or other tag that becomes somewhat permanent in the industry. So no matter what airline, they're going to, you're going to basically put that tag into your boarding pass. And if your bag is associated with you and the camera technologies and everything else. That bag is going to get linked with you as you traverse the process. And I just think you're going to start to see everything from ordering your latte to picking up a newspaper or whatever, you know, and I think you're going to start to see things being delivered to airplanes that you know, never have before. It's going to be almost like duty free on international flights where you pick it up at the gate instead of sitting down in a restaurant. You can order food from Chili's or wherever in the airport and then pick that food up and eat it on the plane. Because we're not seeing people wanting to sit in restaurants in the airport right now, even though it is the cleanest it's ever been. So I just think the touchless technology is going to be the biggest thing that's going to change it. The other piece is, I think, the vaccine. I don't think the vaccine is going to change it tremendously because it's going to take a long time to get it out. I think testing is really the important part, and we're starting a program, and I won't go into great detail, where assurance testing. It can be done very quickly, very inexpensively. We're going to start it with our employees, try to get all the airline workers, the airlines, concessionaires in the program. Then we're going to start offering it to travelers. And it's basically a $15 test where you can have an answer by within 10 to 12 hours, whether you're positive. So if we can do that and have people do it, the day before they travel, 2 days before they travel, everyone now knows what the status is. And if you can get on an airplane and know that everyone is tested before they got on it, nobody was positive. And quite frankly, if you're positive, you shouldn't be traveling anyway. And knowing it, being assured that you're not is important, because if I'm flying to see my 80-year-old mother, I don't want to go see her if I'm positive. So I'd rather not. So I just think there's common sense things we got to put in place, but the biggest is just the evolution of touchless technology.
What about you, Doug? What you see changing in the next 10 years, or technology, marketing, things like that?
The marketing is whatever it's going to take to get the business travelers back out there, on the road. You saw a bunch of the airlines, minimize or would not sell the center seats. So it goes back to what Scott's talking about. Do you do assurance testing so you know that everybody that's on that airplane is not positive for the COVID virus, and that way you can pack them in like sardines? Or, that's the biggest challenge. I feel we're not having a problem right now with restaurants, because most of our restaurants downtown Nashville are closed. So if you come to the airport, you can eat at a restaurant, that's socially distanced and spaced. So technology is going to give us an answer. It'll be like Scott was saying, your phone is going to be your key passport to everywhere. If you saw the story last week on Ticketmaster, where they were going to make you, before you could buy a ticket to an arena or a sports game or a concert, you had to, they're planning to have you prove that you're COVID negative, that you've had a test. So imagine that. So Scott may be right. If you have to have a test to get on an airplane, or a test to go to the Rolling Stones concert or whoever, you're going to need something. And so it'll be interesting to see how technology handles that.
And Doug, the interesting part, not to cut Steve off, is the program, this assurance testing program we're working on locally with epidemiologists, will get you a certificate to travel.
Yeah.
My answer is going to be a little bit different than theirs. Looking from the regional side and looking at where technology is, there's a pilot project, no pun intended, starting this week or next week in Hawaii using electric aircraft. As an old pilot, the thought of electric aircraft kind of concerned me, but it will have a pilot in it. But what I see in the future, especially from the regional airports, is that we will become, there's a segment of our flying that cannot drive to Memphis or cannot drive to Nashville. They either don't have the physical ability to drive and to transport themselves through the traffic, or they don't have the forewithal to do that. So, so the people that we move into the Memphis airport or move into the Nashville airport, I think we're going to see that change because of technology. We're going to see some aircraft that are very, very efficient that will allow us to do flights all day long into Memphis. 4, 5, 6 people. I also see that technology going into the smaller airports. I see the Union City airports. We have Obion County people here. I see Obion, the airport at Union City, being able to have some kind of service that will move those type passengers into and out of the Memphis airport or the Nashville airport with ease for them. So as we look at what technology is going to do for the airport, I think we're going to see a lot more efficient forms of moving people in and out. I've thought that it would be real interesting to have high-speed rail that connected all of these airports. The airport here is not very far from Memphis, about 75, 80 miles, I guess. And to be able to move some of those people high-speed rail where they could fly to international places. I think those are the technologies we're going to see going forward for regional airports. Will it be in the next 4 to 5 years? I don't think so, because the infrastructure's got to be built. But I think we're going to see more efficient forms of transporting people to the larger airports, and I think that's coming.
All right. Well,
Steve, I appreciate you pointing out to everybody that Memphis is closer to y'all than Doug and Nashville being a. It's a further drive, so y'all need to come southwest and come to Memphis because it's a shorter drive. That's all.
There's nothing on my agenda that says Scott has a commercial here. I'm off.
That's marketing, Doug.
In fairness to Scott, it was a marketing question, and we made it almost to the end of it without somebody doing a commercial, which is pretty impressive. Hey, we're almost done, but I do want to ask a question, and you guys may not want to answer this, and that's okay too. If you could add any destination, or if you're looking to add a destination from your airport over the next 3 to 5 years, and not saying that you are, but one that you would like to add or working on, what is that, or where is that? And then we'll go Doug, Steve, and end with Scott. And this is added on the end, and we're almost out of time, so I'm not asking for an essay, just some locations you'd like to add.
For Nashville, we want to get back the London flight that was stopped due to the pandemic. And 3 to 5 years from now, we hope to have a nonstop to Asia.
Jackson is very interested in keeping and building their Atlanta flight, but we want to add Chicago.
And for Memphis, we've got Delta starting Boston in January, hopefully. But West Coast is really what we're lacking, nonstops, whether it's Seattle, San Francisco, additional lift to LA, and then San Diego. We have a lot of demand, but not a lot of flights. And so I would have told you a couple, what was that, Doug?
Nothing.
They can come to Nashville? No, I mean, we used to have Amsterdam when we were a hub, and I'd like to get international back. But right now is a challenge. I think that's not going to be on the top priority for us. I can see Doug, since they have a more recent track record. But yeah, it's just focusing on those things. Of course, Air Canada, is not flown because of border restrictions. We'd like to get those relaxed at some point and get our Air Canada flights back. So, yeah.
Well, I want to thank, you guys, Scott, Steve, and Doug, for taking the time. I know you are busy, and we appreciate you guys giving us an hour to talk to us about this. So thank you. I also want to thank the Obion County Chamber for their members being present, and Diane and Dr. Eubanks and Le Bonheur Children's Outpatient Center. Thank you guys for sponsoring, and again, all that you do for our community. I'll tell you one thing that's really cool about these type meetings, these Zoom meetings is, and Miss Erling, I'm not going to ask you to say anything, but I'm sitting here looking at my screen, And I started the meeting off by complimenting Jill and all the work that she's done. And her mom is in Iowa, sitting in her living room, sitting here watching this. So how cool is that? So welcome, Miss Erling, from Jackson, Tennessee. You can catch a flight to either Memphis, Nashville, or McKellar from close to you, I'm sure. And I'm sure Jill will send you some money to get you up here. It is safe to fly. So keep an eye on our chamber emails for details on upcoming virtual events. And we appreciate you guys for tuning in and listening. And I'm sure, Jill, you can nod your head. This will be on our social media and posted on our website if anyone wants to rewatch this exciting conversation. So thanks, guys, and hope you guys stay safe. And thanks again to our speakers and Lamana for all that you guys do. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.